You know what was the biggest diplomatic event this month? The Quad Summit in Australia. It was scheduled for next week. Now it's been cancelled. Why? Thanks to US President Joe Biden. He's called off his visit to Australia, so the summit stands cancelled. And why won't he go? Because his own house is on fire. The Republicans are holding him hostage. The US government is running out of money. It needs cash, but the US Congress is not signing any checks. Biden has 2 weeks to fix this, else there could be a government shutdown and a debt default, which will be a first in American history. So this is an emergency, and the Quad Summit will have to wait. And this episode has once again demonstrated the perils of American hegemony. A couple of their banks fail, and the global banking sector loses money. Their politicians cannot agree on a debt ceiling, and the Quad Summit gets cancelled. The Quad, as you would know, is a strategic grouping. It has 4 members: Australia, India, Japan, and the United States. Leaders of all these 4 countries were supposed to meet in Sydney, Australia next week. This would have been their 3rd such meeting. Until 24 hours back, everything was on track. Then suddenly, Biden decided to skip Australia. He called his host, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. He said he won't be able to make it because he must resolve the debt crisis first. Australia found itself in a fix. It wanted to keep the summit alive, so it proposed a solution. If Biden cannot come, perhaps his representative could, someone like US Secretary of State Antony Blinken perhaps. But it did not work. Reports say soon after Biden's decision, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida also pulled out. So Albanese just called off the summit.
The Quad leaders meeting will not be going ahead in Sydney next week. We, though, will be having that discussion between Quad leaders in Japan. I thank Prime Minister Kishida for his invitation for me to attend the G7, and it is appropriate that we talk.
Quick side note. Albanese attended the last Quad Summit in Japan within hours of taking oath as Prime Minister. He did not want to miss it. But President Biden won't be able to fly to Australia, so the summit won't happen. Instead, the leaders will sit down in Japan for a chat. Japan is hosting the G7 summit this week. All 4 Quad leaders will be present, so they'll meet on the sidelines. Prime Minister Modi of India will be present. He'll also go to Australia, irrespective of Biden's plans. In Sydney, Prime Minister Modi is expected to address the Indian community, but no Quad meeting. And it's not the only casualty of Biden's decision. He's also called off his trip to Papua New Guinea. This was supposed to happen on Monday, and there were grand plans for it. Biden would have been treated like royalty. Reports say the government there had decided to shut down the country's airspace and declare the day a public holiday, also close key roads, and have dancing groups greet Biden's motorcade. It was a grand plan. Why was he going, though? To meet leaders of the Pacific Islands. Prime Minister Modi is going there too. They're all making an outreach to the Pacific. They've ignored the region for a long time. China has benefited from it. It has stepped in to fill the vacuum. Now Washington wants to regain its turf, and Biden's visit would have helped. Consider what an expert in Australia said about this, and I'm quoting. The mantra in the region is all about turning up. Turning up is half the battle. China turns up all the time, and so the optics aren't great. That's right, the optics are not great. American domestic politics has bulldozed the Quad Summit. The China policy can wait, the allies can wait, the Pacific nations can wait. American politicians cannot. That's the message going out. And there's no progress with the budget negotiations. Biden met with the Republicans, no deal yet. Although both sides sound more positive now.
Look, it was a good and productive meeting. Everyone agreed that default would be the worst outcome, a horrible situation for America and America's families. But we also agreed that we need to pass a bipartisan bill with bipartisan support in both chambers.
I think we set the stage to carry on further conversations. The president agreed to appoint a couple people from his administration to sit down and negotiate directly with my team, so I found that to be productive personally.
So they promise a deal, but can't say when. The world, meanwhile, is on the edge. A US default would spell disaster. The White House released a statement yesterday. It said, and I'm quoting, President Biden will return to the United States on Sunday following the completion of the G7 summit in order to be back for meetings with congressional leaders to ensure that Congress takes action by the deadline to avert default. So until Biden gets the money to run his government, world affairs will have to take a back seat. And this has become a hallmark of American diplomacy now. This breach of trust, lack of dependability, lack of policy continuity. President Trump did it with the Paris climate deal and the Iran nuclear deal. He walked out of both of them. The world suffered the consequences. Then Biden came to power. He rejoined the Paris Accord. He promised to revive the Iran deal. Virtually no progress. The point is, in a democracy, governments change. And governments spar with the opposition on policy issues all the time. But they also honor their international commitments. They don't hold the world hostage to their domestic political exigencies. When Biden came to power, he said America is back. Well, he was right. It's back to riding roughshod over the world.